that. We got the
Yeah,
rest
we're
of
here, Jan. I don't know if you can see us, but we're here.
I want to hear Sam's voice too.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I'm here as well. Thank
There
you.
you go. Again, the godlike voice. Thank you. Yeah. Excuse me. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Bob. If I could recognize you. Yes, please.
As some of you probably know, the announcement passed of Steve Shepherd this past week. Steve was a member of our teams, but he was also president of the board, very active in ATP construction, and considered one of the go-to teams to discuss the impacts of construction related items to parts of dealing with. His life, basically, he was a lifer with water. Started out as a foreman.
Turn your mic on. Turn your mic on, please.
Excuse me. Sorry. Yeah, Steve worked his way up from a superintendent with Borderland. This was 30 years ago, and is probably known well in the private sector subdivision community. He was an expert in the subdivision and roadway work with Borderland, worked his way up to be president. I think he had a long-term illness over the last 6 months, but did want to acknowledge his passing and his involvement with the TMC, and his contributions not only to this group, but also to ATP with the Centurions and with some others. And they're having a celebration of life tomorrow at 11 a.m. at, I believe, the Zion Community, Zion City Flowing Wells. It's on Roof Roth at 11 a.m.
Bob, thank you very much for sharing that with us. If we could just have a moment of silence. My thanks to Steve. Our thoughts with his family. Bob. Thanks. Mr. Ortega, we do not have minutes to approve at this point. When we meet every day like this, it's a little tough, but if we could turn it over to you, RTA next.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. First of all, I wanted to just say thank you to all of you for your commitment and really working through this effort. And we've got a lot of moving parts, but I remain confident that everybody working together, I think we can come up with something that ultimately we can take to the RTA board. I'd also like to, quick shout out to the staff. Been beating on them pretty hard to get things for you and in preparation for the board. So thank you to them.
Couldn't even dress for today.
It's Friday, okay. We won't go down that, but we will be establishing a dress code for these, which will not include ties, will not include button shirts. But anyway, the other group I want to reach out to, or at least shout out to, is our partners in the industry, ATB and also ACEC. I had a great conversation yesterday with Alejandro Angel, and I want to share a few things, but before I do that, I want to just say thanks, because they're putting a lot of energy and effort into this as well. Even though they may not be sitting here, they're doing a bunch of things on their end to try to help and support and really put together the information, or some of the information that's going to be helpful as we go forward. So with that, Madam Chair, what I'd like to do is go over the first spreadsheet, which is this one. It's the one that you've seen before, but it's been modified. It's a big one. Yeah, it's up on top. It says RTA current financial.
It's just been shared to Tim and.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Sam, Tim, what we're going to do is you'll get an email with this information post haste if you haven't already. But in addition, just so everyone knows, we figured out a way that when we show it up on the screen, we will actually post it online as well. so that if you're watching online, it'll actually be posted as a part of the materials for the meeting. So each time we go over a spreadsheet or we go over a document online, you'll be able to see that in real time. So please.
When those emails go out, can they just be sent to the entire group with the electronic stuff?
Great, we can do that.
And
Yep.
Mike, we have 2 emails with like 8 docs. So I think we've got what you're referring to.
Excellent. Thank you, Tim. Appreciate that. So Alejandro and I chatted yesterday at length about the capacity of the region, and that's been something that we've been concerned with. We've talked about that at this group. So we're gonna change the terminology a little bit. So we used to use this B word called burn rate, and rather than refer to it as burn rate, we're going to refer to it as expenditure rate. I think it's more accurate in terms of the way that we outline and we refer to it. So from here on out, if anyone says burn rate, we have a cuss jar and you need to put a $5 bill in it. So this spreadsheet really is indicative of what the region's capacity was for, I'll call, the first 10 to 12 years of the program. And so what Alejandro did, and since he's an engineer, I didn't double check his numbers. I feel comfortable that he did this right, but you all can double check them. But if you look at the blue, those blue numbers to the right there, those are in 2026 dollars. And so what he did is he used the numbers of the actual expenditures, the TPT expenditures, and he put them in the context of 2026 dollars. And so when you look at that, you can see that our capacity as a region was very significant for the first 10, 12 years of the program. Now, something happened in 18 and beyond, and we'll talk about that maybe here in a second. But I think what this shows is that when we were firing on all cylinders, there was not a capacity problem. Basically, we were able to do all of the projects that were scheduled and move them forward. Okay. And so I wanted to point that out. By the way, I did ask Alejandro if he'd be interested in maybe coming. He said he would. So if there's value in him coming, and he is on the board of ACEC, if there is value in having he or maybe Lisa from ATB come and have a conversation around this, we can invite them. I don't know that we need to if we have this and it shows it's pretty straightforward that we have the capacity, but I wanted to talk through that with you and make that offer. And so the offer stands if you all would like to have them come. I'm sure they'd be happy to do that.
Appears to be asked.
Okay, good. So let's talk a little bit about those next years from 18 on. You can see that there was a pretty significant drop in expenditure rate based on these figures. Now, I think part of the conversation for us now is, okay, how do we assure ourselves the opportunity to perform like we were in the first part of the program? So some of the things that I've kicked around in my head anyway is how do we develop maybe a support structure for our partner agencies and do it in a way where we have consultants available to us up to and including even staff that can help with the delivery side. And that can range from contract administration, even construction management, right-of-way acquisition, all of those pieces that are hard, right? That they're tough and they're complex, but oftentimes they start to get bogged down for whatever reason. And so maybe there's a way that we can establish a small team that can help with that. So that's one thought. The other thought that I've actually kicked around is on the right-of-way acquisition. It's kind of curious in the way that we approach that. Today, the agency will go out and acquire property, right? And if there's any excess property that's sold down the road, right, those proceeds come back to the RTA. So maybe there's a conversation to be had about the role the RTA plays in acquiring the right-of-way to start with. Instead of doing this pass through, if you will, and then back, maybe the RTA should be considering the acquisition of right-of-way as a team, as part of the function, if you will, to reduce one step in that. we basically we give the money to the agency to go out and buy the property. And then if they have remnant parcels, they bring it back to the RTA, just kind of circuitous almost. So maybe there's an opportunity for the RTA to step in and do the right of way acquisition. And so that way the board, now there's some nuances there. I don't know that we have the condemnation authority and some of the other things that the agencies have. We'll have to check on that. But clearly that could bring we'll call it a fast forward resolution when there are challenges to the RTA board, so that the RTA board then, who is ultimately responsible for the delivery of the program, will have some very real time information that they can then, make decisions on and go forward. So again, throwing stuff out, spitballing, but maybe that's an opportunity for us to think about going forward. And so, if in fact that's a component or a constraint, maybe that's where we could step in and have a conversation. So that's all on this particular spreadsheet. Like I said, I think it's pretty self-explanatory once you start looking at this. I don't have the same concerns about capacity of the region based on this. I still think we need to dissect what's happened in the last 8 years, and have a discussion about that. But I'm not as concerned as I was. I think this is pretty telling. So happy to answer questions on that. Sure.
I think this is awesome. I think Wednesday this week, given the feedback we were getting from the contractors and the engineering firms, it seemed like it was a more appropriate question for us to be asking of ourselves in terms of what is our capacity to deliver projects, to get projects to the street for bid. And I appreciate this. It does indicate that, as you said, Mike, when all cylinders are firing as a region, we can really put things out and get things done. So I think that's awesome. Because I think it's paramount in our ability to recommend RTA next to our board with confidence. I think it's really important that we take a few minutes and maybe try it, even at a high level, identify what some of those categorical issues might have been since 2018, so that we can take a few minutes or some time to, if we have to, adjust the plan, the RTA next plan. We can do that. So I appreciate this. I think it's really kind of putting a spotlight on maybe something that we ought to devote just a little bit of time to, even if it's at a high level. And one of the suggestions that you said or state in terms of streamlining is having maybe the RTA staff take care of right-of-way acquisition. I think it's awesome. But are there other things that maybe were causing bottlenecks since 2018 that we need to address, even if it's only at a high level? Thanks.
And Shane, that's it. I think what we've identified, and look at what are the areas we need to fix to make sure from a policy perspective or procedural perspective that we can keep moving. And I think I go back to Bill's comment at the last meeting too, that the industry is different than it was in 2006, and that there may not be people here today, but these are national, international organizations that can redefine and reallocate resources, which I think is going to was a very good eye opener for me, at least too. So, Kurt?
Yeah, thanks, Jan. What I don't recognize here is the millions of dollars, hundreds of millions transferred from the regional fund over to the RTA. Because if a quick look at this, it looks as though there was enough sales tax revenue coming in to fund the projects. And that's kind of not what we were hearing before. Because we had this infusion of, what was it, almost 300 million that was transferred. So, kind of raised a question in my mind, did we really need to transfer that money? And if we didn't need to transfer it, where is it?
Thank you.
So I'll, based on my exhaustive time here now, I'll just tell you, we absolutely needed to transfer it based on the total cost. Now, keep in mind, and I've given you before the information on fund balance.
Mhm.
And so once the dollars were transferred in, they stayed there. They didn't go anywhere. And so we do have some fund balance. I went over that with you, I think one of my first meetings. And so those dollars that were transferred that weren't used, regional dollars, are still there. And I think it's a pretty small amount that's not encumbered or not assigned at this point. I think it's only like 15 million. But those dollars are there. And so I would say to you, we needed it in terms of the magnitude of the program. Did we need it in that particular year? I can't comment on that right this minute. I don't know. But when you look at the totality of the program, absolutely.
I'll call Alejandro and talk to him about this because he and I have gone through the same exercise on this and we kind of got to the same place in a different way. But I'll talk to him and try to clarify it in my own mind. Okay,
That'd be good.
thanks.
Sam, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to note on this, on the expenditures, beginning back in like fiscal year 2018, 2019, we experienced a lot of roadblocks working with the RTA to deliver the projects. And I think that maybe contributed to some of the lower expenditure rates for those years. And also we were working on some of our more complex projects like Grant Road 3-4, Grant Road 5-6, downtown links. And so I think it's just helpful understanding the context of what was going on around that time in terms of project delivery. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Got it. Okay. I'm sorry, Carmine. Right on the.
I think as we're looking at how to streamline the process, one of the resource bottlenecks is on the inspection side. And I think that rather quickly, right, the jurisdictional staff resources become overwhelmed. So as you're talking about, potential right-of-way acquisition assistance, I think inspection services assistance, right, through on-call contracts or something, right, if we can get a better rate by bulk buying contracted inspection services, that could be of assistance.
Thank you. Yep, Bill?
Madam Chair, I appreciate Sam's comments. I'm looking at this list too, and it goes, I mean, we're consistently at or near $100,000 and suddenly it drops to half of that. And at that point in time, I know it wasn't, we didn't have enough money to be able to get these projects done. So there was something else holding back. The fact that they were more difficult projects, certainly that's part of it. But his first comment of difficulty in dealing with RTA, is something that is exactly what you're talking about, Mike, is we need to figure out where the roadblocks were so that we don't have the same roadblocks moving forward.
Exactly. Thank you, Bill. Bob, did you have a comment? No, okay. Thank you. Thank you.
So let's talk through some of those. And by the way, I was looking at that. It sort of corresponds with me becoming city manager at the city, which makes me a little nervous to have. It's like, wait a minute, time out here. I did start in 15, by the way, but so the I think the reality is this, right? Where does the accountability need to be? So if we talk through this for a minute, Sam mentioned there were roadblocks at the RTA during that time, whatever they were, right? How were those surfaced? How were those roadblocks or those decisions escalated in a way that was to the board or to the city council at the time to say, look, we have a disagreement on whatever the issue is. And in order for us to continue to move forward, we need to resolve those. And I don't know that was part of the chemistry at that time, it's my gut, because there just wasn't either an understanding or an interest in doing that. And I think to be honest, I think that's what I'm observing is, how open are we to having this type of a discussion, out in public, right? If we've got some challenges, nobody likes to, air dirty laundry. But the flip side of it is if it means we need to move the project forward and we're not talking about it, we're not talking about solutions, what does that look like? So I think that's one thing. The other piece that Sam mentioned, which I think is extremely important, and by the way, back to that first point, I think that going forward, that's exactly what we need to do. If we do see that there is a willingness, and I know Sam and I have talked many times where the city's raring to go and can't get authorization, right? For whatever reason. Well, we need to escalate that quickly. We can't just wait, right? And as soon as that roadblock, if you will, happens, we need to be able to figure out what is it going to take to get off the dime on those things. So that's, in my opinion, the first level of accountability, and that needs to happen immediately. So we're already doing that internally. I've authorized and really empowered the staff to have those types of discussions with your staff, where if you hit a roadblock, we escalate it and we try to figure out how to get that, even if it means going to the board and having an open discussion in front of the board. The second piece that Sam mentioned, though, I think is extremely important to think through, and that's the complexity, because some of these projects are extremely complex. And yeah, I know that Sam's, thinking probably some of the Grant Road, some of the Midtown urban, but when we start talking about interchanges in Marana for RTA Next, and you start to infuse the railroad and the business community and all the other things that go along with that, the complexity of that becomes exponential. I mean, it just goes off the charts, right? So in order to stay on track, one of the discussions we've had internally is, how do we start those conversations? So let's say it's in period 1 or period 2 of the program. How do we start those conversations before it's scheduled, so that we can do, we'll call it pre-planning or whatever the right terminology for that might be, so that we're moving those discussions and we're recognizing or identifying potential challenges, whether it's the railroad, it's utilities, and if we're dealing with WAPA lines or whatever the challenge might be out there, so that we're not like it's in period 1 and we're still monkeying around with it in period 3 because of the complexities. And so I think that is on all of us to go through the schedules and really look at those projects. Everybody wants their project up front, right? Everybody wants their project number 1, and that's great. But the reality is some of those are going to be delayed because of, right, things outside of our control. And that's what's making me nervous. Things that we control are great. Those are those things we can turn the dials on. But when we get into a situation where there's factors outside of us, things that we control, then we have to pay attention and have a safety net. We've got to be able to figure out what we do on the other side of that. Going back to some of the logistics, I do see that we could have a conversation with the board about a small team. Conrad mentioned inspections. I mean, there's a variety of things that I think we could do to help. Now, what does that look like? And the reality for us is it's an investment, but that investment up front, quite frankly, will save us in the long run. There's no doubt in my mind. As a matter of fact, when you look at delays in acquisition of right-of-way or delays in construction, particularly in our world today, those are very, very significant cost increases. And if we can short circuit some of that by having folks on call, if you will, or available to the team, not necessarily just to the RTA, but to the team as a whole, I think that could really, really be of value. So I think there's something to trying to dissect a lot of that. And I think those are pieces that are there. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
That makes so much sense, Mike. I mean, we do this. We do this for our customers as municipalities. When developer comes in, we have, one-stop shops, or we have, pre-development meetings. Why? Well, we want to identify obstacles and hurdles. We want to save time and cost, and we want to keep it away from an issue that our board has to, or our council has to deal with, right? So we do this stuff for other people. We need to be doing it for ourselves.
We become the customer.
We become the customer. So.
Bill.
It may sound like I'm trying to feather my own nest, but I can assure you that I will not still be in this business by the time these projects move forward. It's really difficult for municipalities to be able to hire staff. And when we're talking about particularly inspections, there's a limited amount of inspection people out there that have that skill set. And when you've got 3 municipalities all trying to hire inspection people at the same time, it becomes that much more difficult. Setting up early on through PAG, some on-call construction inspectors. I commented Wednesday that we have the ability to be able to bring people from elsewhere and have them work here. And I think setting up those kinds of on-call systems so that when projects get bogged down and they can't find the staff, they pick up the phone and they put a SOMAS or whoever on board and get the inspection done. But I think it would be nice if it was all through RTA and it was a service that was provided to all the different municipalities.
So because the staff has a lot of time on their hands, I'll ask them to take on some of that. No, I'm kidding. So clearly, I think we might be onto something here, right? I think this could be a way of elevating the accountability because again, it's you know you heard Sam, right? RTA provided roadblocks, and I'm sure there's well, but the city didn't do this, or the town didn't do that, or the county didn't do that. And so rather than get into that and bog down, you never heard that. Let me say that publicly, it's the county's fault. But I think that we might be onto something. So we'll put some thoughts down, and as we're going forward, we'll have a parallel conversation around this. Okay.
I think it was really huge, Mike, on the idea of having a defined plan to accelerate discussion or elevate discussion when roadblocks are experienced. I think we all, we do that in some of our negotiations, right? If you get bogged down, there's a way to elevate or escalate the discussion. We need to do that for ourselves as well. And that way we're proactive in dealing with those things.
Thank you.
Mike, I unfortunately got to a point where I used to refer to the RTA as a regulator, and that's not the role I think we should have. In fact, and in our experience in the county, we would set the schedules for our work, and if we slipped, we never heard from our partner, the RTA. It was, just, all right, get it done when you get it done. I think there ought to be a little, and I hesitate to say that because I don't want the RTA to be a big dog,
Right.
Trying to attack the jurisdictions, but you will need that kind of oversight of stay on track. But in the past, it's always been, you're the jurisdiction, get it done. We'll wait for you. So something like that has to evolve, I think, from all that.
And I think, Madam Chair, I think, John, the way I'm kind of seeing it, at least in my head, is not a regulator, but a facilitator, almost an expediter, but really it's a partner, right? And it's equal footing to deliver the program. And you can't do that. I mean, you got to hold each other accountable, that clearly, right? But it doesn't have to be the regulator role. I think it can be with a partnership. So any other questions on that?
Oh, I'm sorry, Bob.
Madam Chair, keep in mind too, I think we're on something too with looking at the deliverable rates, the methodology of delivering from inception through end of design, and the ability, I think, because you're hiring professional consulting firms, and if their ability to be a little more autonomous, and expediting their time frame, I think will accelerate some of these deliverable rates. Okay, in some instances they have percentages complete. The design then goes to the agencies or whatever for review, and it's a long time period between when they have to reactivate to take on a design procedure from 30% to 50% or 80%. If we can come up with a flowchart methodology with their input, give them a little more autonomy, it may help in this situation.
Madam Chair, Mr. Ortega, in reference to the shortage of inspectors and people that will deliver the projects, we have a great resource at the U of A with Dean Papajohn, and then also at Pima College. Maybe the PAG can work with the two entities to help develop new staff, inspectors, working with Dean and helping have Dean develop, or in conjunction with PAG, develop, RTA would develop a program to help, new professionals coming into the industry. And then, obviously there's a brain drain that's, occurring right now as well, and, a lot of us won't be here, when these programs, move forward. And so I would also suggest maybe having some meetings with, or sessions, with young professionals that are in the business right now. Having us, we've all been there, we've been there developing projects. And, just a one-on-one collaboration with young professionals that are out there now. And, just teaching them how to develop projects, how to deliver projects. And, I think that, we have a lot of resources available to us to help deliver these projects. Thank you.
Great suggestion. Thank you. Thanks very much. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
Just one more quick comment. I think Shane hit on something really important, that in the municipalities, there are ways to move things forward. When we're working with the development community and they don't like the answer they get from the staff, they have no hesitation to go to the council. And that never really existed here. It was when we hit the executive director and there was an argument between the municipality and the executive director, it was just an argument, and there never was a sounding board to be able to move that forward. And so I think you're on the right track, Mike.
Okay. So, Madam Chair, what I'd like to do now is, let's move to, what I'll call the tweaks plus, conversation. Rick's going to lead us through, and basically what we did is took as many tweaks as we could and included them with constrained, obviously, and gives us an opportunity to at least see what a solution might look like that's out there. Now, I will tell you, in fairness to the city, we have not included the transit ask. I think that's a conversation we should have, here today. But let's let Rick go through it, and then we'll come back and we'll have that discussion as well. So, Rick, I'll turn it over to Rick, and he can lead you to which one he wants.
I'm going to call your attention, if you would, Madam Chair, members of the committee. The first one, just for reference, so I can show you the evolution of this. So the one that's titled RTA Next, Requested Revisions Plus Inflation. So Isa, if you've got that one. That's it. The only reason I want to point this out is the comment was made at Wednesday's meeting, which seems like a lifetime ago, to combine the inflation aspects of it, make sure everything's updated, plug that in with the requested comments, the elements that wanted to see added, and then making sure, parallel with all that, as we've added inflation, we want to make sure that the revenue adjustment had been increased as well. So we put all of it in one place. You don't have to worry about the individual highlights. You can read those on your own time. It's incorporated all the changes and comments that we received even at that day. The bottom line is the number at the bottom was approximately 567 million over what our allocated budget is. All right. So that had been asked, can we put all this together and where do we stand? So that sets the stage then to go to what's titled next is RTA Next Recommended. So this now represents a balanced version, and I'm going to highlight the things that we did to make it come into balance. First and foremost, we removed the additional transit aspect of 540 million. Then we reduced the administration cost by approximately 4.3 million to align with 1% of the anticipated revenue. So you'll see that all on the back page, but I'm just walking you through it. Eliminated contingency entirely. That's been removed. Doing that allowed then for an addition of 2 million to the arterial reconstruction, which bumped that from 60 to 62. And we are balanced. If you look at the back page, we're off by 500 and something, $31, whatever, $1,000. So it essentially balances. But those were the only changes. Every other request was able to be honored, and the adjustments and increases and all the other modifications that were going on through the discussions have been incorporated. With
Madam-
that, Mike, if there's anything else you want.
Yeah,
Please go
Madam
ahead.
Chair, Rick, just a couple of, I think there's a couple of explanations that are of value here. Number one, the 2026 dollars for the expenses have been assumed to be about a 10% inflation between what was established in the original cost estimate and what is shown here. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so that's one thing that's important is we basically inflated all of it to $26. The second thing that we did is we inflated the revenue as well. Okay, so it's both the expenditures and the revenue, okay? The third thing is, after conversations with Rick and his team, I recommended the reduction or elimination of the contingency because the project analysis includes about a 10% contingency now. And I think that's probably even a little low. It's probably a little more than that, but on average, I'd say it's about 10%. So if you take, roughly $2 billion, that's about a $200 million contingency scattered throughout the entirety of the program. I'm more comfortable with that, knowing that now, and being able to tell you I'm not concerned about removing that $25 million contingency. The other thing, let's see here, I just wanted to make sure I caught that. On the debt service, we still have 5 million in there. Is that correct, Rick? We've still got 5 million.
That is correct.
It is. We have a $5 million, what I'll call placeholder for debt service. Although the cash flow does not look like we'll need debt service based on smoothing. Now, if we cram all the projects into period one, we're going to be out of money by 32, and we're going to need a bond in order to make it happen, right? And when I say we're out of money, we're out of cash in hand, right? And so my gut is that as we get this process together, we'll smooth it out adequately so we're not having to bond. However, if something should happen and rates are great and the group decides, hey, we want to do that, I think that we should have a placeholder there for conversation in the future. And that conversation is probably 5 to 7 years out. And at that time, we can run numbers again. And then best case scenario, we don't need it and we can use that $5 million for other things
I want to just remind myself, I think at some of the past discussions, we'd indicated that if we don't do this, so that it's on the ballot as part of one of the elements, if you will, then we wouldn't be able to add it if needed. So that's why we're absolutely.
Madam Chair, I've not confirmed that because our current plan, I don't believe has debt service, and we actually issued two bonds for that. So, but we had been guided previously, so I just didn't want to challenge it. I figured I'll just put a placeholder in there, leave it there, and that way we've got it and we can move.
I just wanted to clarify what's included in this because I think there was another element that the city requested that is not included. So it's both the transit was not included, and we had that conversation at our last meeting and I heard that, but also the city had requested a look at the distribution and the relative percentages, and that also is not been addressed in this, correct? Okay, I don't want to leave the statement that it's all been included when we, for sure, there's that one that was still left off the table.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank you.
We'll talk about both of those in a minute.
Okay.
Yeah, Jan, just for reference, the original plan did have $100 million set aside for debt service. And RTA did issue some bonds originally. I think Jim DeGrood was there at the time, and they sold out overnight. I wanted to buy some and missed out. So that was a fairly successful bond program.
Do it again?
Yes, do it again. Do it again.
Checks in the mail, Curtis. Thank you.
Thank you. Carmine, then Shane.
Madam Chair, Mike, has RTA staff confirmed with the jurisdictions the non-RTA dollar contributions? Those have gone up too. And so I know we talked about that as a group and said, let's go ahead and increase those. I think we need to get confirmation from the jurisdictions that tracks. Many of them, at least for the county, are going to be impact fee dollars. And does that track with what our projections are for those dollars?
No, we have not done that, and we plan to do that. Keep in mind, hot off the presses, so we've still got some work to do. This is a work session, if you will, but clearly there's impacts outside of that. And so we'll make sure that as we go back and take a look at it.
I think I'd find it helpful on this document that's labeled RTA Next recommended. So that's PAG staff recommended. I think it would be helpful for the construction start period to reflect the smoothing that's necessary in order to make it all happen. So we understand where we were originally slated in the original plan, but if this is going to be a document that I think we can use to promote a conversation with the board, I think, Mike, that last column probably needs to reflect RTA staff's best take at how do we smooth these out. And, maybe the more complicated projects need to be in period 1 and 2 so that you have time to get those done, because those are obviously really complicated. And anyway, so just a suggestion though.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. So Shane, I really hesitated putting recommended up there because it really isn't our recommendation yet. This is an iteration and we're just going through that. Yeah, everything will say draft. If you haven't figured that out yet, it all says draft.
Almost
Um,
900.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, getting back, thanks, John. Getting back to the topic of the moving over regional funds from PAG, I don't see that in here either. It seemed like we had a commitment of, even with RTA Next, of having 5 to whatever years of all the regional revenue moving in also. And this seems to be just the TPT in here. Is that right? So if that's the case, then we would not need to have the regional funds diverted.
Right.
Go ahead, James or Rick. Either one.
Can you ask that again, Curtis? I'm sorry.
So what we're looking at here is under we have the regional budget, you have the transportation tax coming in. We were talking previously about needing 5+ years of all of the regional revenues moving over from PAG to the RTA in order to fund the projects. And I think what I'm looking at here is primarily the half-cent sales tax plus the local contributions, ADOT's contributions and so on, without that regional money being moved over. Am I close to right?
This does not reflect or show RTA current, which is where the regional allocation is committed to. So this only shows the discussions that have taken place through the working sessions about what would be identified for the projects moving forward as part of RTA Next, including the 4 modified scope projects, which have a contribution. But the money you're talking about, the regional allocation, is devoted and committed to the current projects underway.
Okay, and not the 4.
And not the
Okay.
4. There is an allocation in there of STBG in fiscal year 28 for the First Avenue project, but that's the only one. The rest of them are in the current plan projects.
Okay, thank you.
So if I'm, could I just add to
Please,
that?
no, absolutely.
So the STBG and HERF that are reserved for the what we were calling the deferred projects, those only go through fiscal 29, and then we would depend upon excise tax in the new plan to cover the remaining need for those deferred. So there was also a part of the non-plan, or if RTA Next didn't pass, there was a proposal to extend the regional funds out to 2036, but that was never formalized. So RTA Next does not include anything beyond 29 as it relates to regional dollars.
So I think what I'm looking at here is good news, the way the numbers are working out. So I'm feeling good about where we're headed. So thank you.
Terry.
So I'd just like to ask a question about project number 11 and project number 18. And SR 210, the extension. So we've got 50 million. I know we skinnied that down from where it previously was, but that's essentially like $1 billion project. And I'm curious, is that a priority for the region? I don't remember how that became. I know it's ADOT, but are other jurisdictions like 100% aboard? Like that's where we want to be spending our money?
So Madam Chair.
And I'm like genuinely asking the question because
I get it.
I drive aviation. I just don't see traffic on there to the extent that we're needing to widen it and extend it. And So I'm curious what the benefit is going to be, and is the juice worth the squeeze on this one?
So, Madam Chair, a little bit of background on that. This project really was part of that, we'll call it that South Tucson improvement to include the Sonoran corridor. It was all part of that discussion. And so for those of you who've been around a bit, when I think Chuck may have been the chair at the time, we talked about this and the value of this in terms of continuing that whole discussion in terms of the Sonoran corridor. That was about half of this cost back then. And so now it's almost more than doubled. And so we really should look at the value of that in this program, in this plan, because it soaks up a tremendous amount of resource. So our money, if you will, the RTA money is about 50 million, but when you took, it's about 1.1 billion. Is that where the region wants to spend the ADOT money? When we have needs on interchanges, we have needs on even mainline, and throughout the region, as opposed to just that one piece. So I do think it's worthy of conversation. And Madam Chair, if you don't mind, maybe we should ask Jeremy
That'd be great.
to give
Thanks.
some. So Jeremy, did you like to add some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the SR210 connection is concerned, I think it is important to the region. I think there's a lot of benefits to it, but I think at the end of the day, the cost from what was, in 2023 versus the 2019, when we did those costs, and then you look at 2024, what was in the draft plan to, 2033, when we get to the year of expenditure, it has significantly gone up. And so I think it is a conversation on, regionally, is that something that we want to move forward with? And so I think we're okay taking a look at that, but we need regional input on that as well.
And I know a lot of this came from the county and looking at the Sonoran corridor and conversations that a lot were occurring. We're reminding Chuck and Mike and others working on this back when. So I'd like to just blow the dust off some of our plans too and look at it and understand our thoughts about the importance to the region.
I mean, and real quick, just to continue to add, I mean, there are improvements that are still needed to Interstate 10 to be able to receive that connection, right? So Keno to Country Club's underway right now, then we need to go Alvernon to Valencia to be able to receive and distribute that traffic. We can't build that SR210 connection without modifying I-10 out to the east because it's only a 4-lane section. And from Alvernon to Valencia, according to the DCR, which there still needs to be some additional modeling done, shows a 10-lane section out there. And that's 5 lanes in each direction, which is what's going to probably be needed to receive that traffic when that entire connection is done. So it's out a ways because we still have to get funded and move out to the east. So,
Madam Chair, maybe there's an opportunity there, Jeremy, for ADOT, and I know that it might take some time, which we don't have, but for ADOT to maybe guide us a little bit in terms of the regional needs on the system, on the interstate system, because I think when you start looking at $1 billion investment and it's our money, I mean, it's the region's money that comes to us, right? But do we want to put all of that based on a recommendation from you? Maybe we revisit some of that because I know there's interchanges. I know I-19 to the south is always in your mind. So we need to really think that. And I think it's worthy post haste to get that looked at and maybe come back with some recommendations. So if we need to modify, we can do that.
Shane, then Curtis, then Bob. I'm sorry.
So I'll admit my ignorance when it comes to the regional need for State Route 210. Obviously it's being thrown up as a question mark here, probably worthy of us wrestling with a little bit. I will note that the Sonoran corridor, through our exercises over the last 3 years, has taken a bit of a backseat as well. It reduced significantly. Now it's down to what, $5 million for right-of-way acquisition or what have you. we're already kind of getting our butts handed to us politically. We see this big elephant hitting us in not too distant future because the alignment is already going through brand new subdivisions, people buying homes and building homes, and the faster we can get that line on the paper and the faster we can purchase right away, at the very least, the better for our region on the Sonoran corridor. Either it's important for us in terms of our best efforts to handle traffic circulation as a region, or it's not. But if it is, and we come up with any spare dollars to put towards a project like that, it's probably well worth it because politically we're already feeling it down in our neck of the woods because of new homes being built right where that corridor is sitting. So
Thank you. It's Curtis.
Yeah, thanks, Jan. Just a reminder that the mere fact that a project is not on this list doesn't mean that it's dead. It can still remain in the long-range transportation plan. The regional contribution could be from regional funds rather than RTA funds. There's so many questions associated with the State Route 210 element that I think we should seriously consider taking it off of the RTA. It's pretty far out there time-wise as well. Taking it off the RTA and just recognize that it's still an important component of the 20-year long-range plan, which gets updated every 5 years, by the way. So thanks.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'm just looking at the idea of at the end result. What is the perception of the voting blocks? And if we're questioning the relevancy of SR 210 here, the challenge of trying to educate the voters on justifying that much money going to this element is significant, and we ought to reconsider it.
Thank you. And I would like perhaps the patience and say, well, let us do the scrub internally on our side. I think, again, you were a manager, Chuck was here. There was a lot of conversation about this, and I'm reluctant to just say, let's take it off before I have a chance to go back to the staff and our board and fully understand what this looks like. But we pledged, we'll revisit this, see and come back to have the conversation at our next meeting, be it
That's Monday.
Monday or Wednesday or Sunday, or, yeah, but we hear the comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'd also suggest, Tim and Christine and Sam, if you could look at that as well, because I know there was pieces that were in the city and there was some interest there. So if you could give us some feedback on that, I think that'd be helpful. Thank you. So I wanted to address one other item. I want to come back to Christina's comments about the percentage and also the transit. But before we do that, Shane had suggested that we take a stab at smoothing to make sure we from a delivery standpoint, but also so we don't paint ourselves in a corner from a bonding standpoint as well. I'm happy to do that, but it would be great if we could get some feedback from you all on projects that could be delayed or could be moved from period one, because it's really period one.
We'll react to you. For
Yeah,
sure.
no, I know you will. Thank you. Appreciate that. So we'll just move all the Sarita stuff off the, it'll be in the fifth. It'll be in the fifth. Yeah. So it would really be helpful if you could give us a little guidance on that. If there are projects that you can move, even from 1 and 2, or even into 2, that would be helpful, or from 2 to 3, and that gives more room on 2. So I throw that out to you. We'll take a stab at it, and I'm happy to do that. But I don't want to pick winners and losers, and that's what it feels like. But I'm happy to come back with some recommendations and say, hey, in order for us to do this, smoothing, that's what it looks like. Hey, Christine.
To be clear, because I'm kind of the new one in the room, that is the construction start. So a more complex project might have, instead of being in periods 1 and 2, might have period 3, because all the pre-construction work is happening in 1 and 2. I just want to make sure that's.
You're right.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
and that's exactly, Madam Chair, that's exactly the conversation, because I do think we've tried to show projects in the periods, and you can see that. But some of the projects are complex enough where they're going to span, 2 periods, hopefully not 3, but they'll span at least 2. And I want to make sure that what we're coming up with makes sense to you, both from a delivery standpoint, but also any promises to the public or any other promises that may have been made as we go through.
But the pre-construction work, you want to know when the construction's starting.
That's the big part, although we can ramp up on some of the pre-work because we'll spend some nickels and dimes there as well.
So what,
Thank you. Just a question, can we have a written definition of what construction start means? Because I think it means different things to different people. Under the previous administration, it kind of meant we just started doing something on the project. I sent out an email, that's construction start, you know. To me, construction start is that the gold shovels have come out of the closet and people are out there turning some dirt over, and that there's actually something physical happening that the public can see versus esoteric things like planning and engineering up front. So, thank you.
Madam Chair, so for the purposes of this conversation, I'm looking for cash flow, not legal definition. So I hear you and I understand where you're headed on that. We'll get to that. But really what I'm looking for is, hey, are you think you're going to be starting construction on whatever it looks like? Because it's really, when are you going to start spending money? That's what I need to know so that we can build it into the cash flow. That's all.
Well, Jan, Mike, could we call that project initiation and then, or something other than construction start?
Sure.
Okay.
But project initiation is also design, development, right-of-way acquisition, et cetera.
no, so are you formally asking us to provide some information on each of our projects in terms of what, you know, what we think we could, you know, actually start our projects in what period?
Yeah, that would be really helpful. We'll take a stab, and I think we've got a pretty good handle on all the projects, if you will, but we'll take a stab at it. But if you got any ideas or thoughts, we're really looking for some help there. Because, you know, what'll happen is we'll push a project, spend a lot of energy and effort getting that smoothing working, and then you're going to come back and say, oh man, not that one. We made promises. And so that's what I'm trying to avoid, is that duplication. That's all. Any help you could give would be great.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Mike, I've had just one. It's been out there for a while. I think you need to delay Lambert Lane until Thornydale Road gets improved, because there's synergy between the two. And I think that was one of the roads. You've got Lambert Lane in period one, you got Thornydale in period one. The necessity to do that east-west connection into Oro Valley, and I can't speak for Oro Valley, I'm just looking at common sense, delay it until Thornydale gets done.
So Bob will be calling Jeff to let him know. Yeah, that's what I heard. Yeah. That's it. There you go.
But Bob, I think that's real perspective, but what makes sense if we're closing one road and health trends?
Madam Chair, I think this goes back to the earlier conversation about the RTA role. My recollection is the county, and probably the city as well, wasn't moving forward with their projects because they didn't have those early dollars to expend on planning and design. So it delays even the start of that process. So is there a way of helping the jurisdictions with that early infusion of dollars, if it's allowable, if it's legal, you know?
What is it that can help facilitate
Exactly.
what that schedule looks like?
Yeah.
Sam has his hand up, but also that's why I was asking if there's dollars available in period 1 or 2 for right-of-way acquisition, design, et cetera, and the construction starts in period 3, you want to know cash flow, which means you want us to put it into period 1 or 2, but that's not where the big dollars necessarily are getting spent. So how do we, and Sam needs to go, but how do we, and he has a question, how do we give you what you need in terms of the staging of the spending? Because it's going to be small at the beginning, it's going to be big in a later period. Can we go to Sam, but just before he runs?
Okay, Sam.
Thank you, Christina, Madam Chair. I have my hand up because I just want to let everybody know that I have to leave, and I'll be logging off here shortly.
Miss you.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
Sam.
Valley.
Yeah, Oro Valley, Lambert Lane and Thornydale are the 4th period. So, that's a great question. By the way, I got in trouble on the radio because I say that's a great question. And all my questions are great. I'm like, okay, sorry, but it's a thought that we've been kicking around, and so blow people's minds here a little bit. But how powerful would it be if we could take advantage of regional money for some of the planning that's necessary. So say that we, and in a perfect world, it's all contained within the program, right? We're done. All of a sudden, say that you have an opportunity to do some pre-planning. You have an opportunity to do some, I'll even use the term pre-design, or even some right-of-way acquisition. But you call and you say, hey, I've got this opportunity to acquire. I know I'm going to need this piece of property. I know, and I have an opportunity. Maybe there's a way where we could, outside of the program, or maybe infuse into the program, some regional money that could help with that. So if it's, a few $1,000,000 to start construction, and we could look at both of them, and look at the entirety of the regional monies as addressing all of the needs that we have, right? So it's not just the RTA program, RTA Next, but it's also all of the other stuff we've got. And we leave ourselves an opportunity to potentially revise the TIP annually. So that instead of it going every 2 years, we have a conversation around revising it annually. And maybe the TIP, instead of it being, 5 years or 3 years, or maybe it's 10 years, that's revised every year, so that we have that flexibility to assist. And it isn't necessarily that it's programmed out of the chute that way, but as opportunities come up, it provides us some flexibility to then say, well, okay, Christina, you've got project X and you need some help. Let's talk about what that looks like in terms of a regional priority, so that we don't lose sight of the delivery on a macro scale. I think that's where there's some flexibility. I think that we could develop that flexibility. Now, in a perfect world, we build it into the program. And so in year 3, we're starting design. In year 4, we're starting, right-of-way acquisition. And then in year 7, we're starting construction. I mean, in a perfect world, that's how that works, right? But I also, going back to some of the complexities that Sam mentioned, I'm also thinking, what happens if we've got it all programmed and then we hit a roadblock? And for whatever reason, railroad, we'll blame them. The railroad, utilities, whatever it is, doesn't allow us to go forward. We need to have something ready to go. We shouldn't just sit back and say, well, we got to wait for whatever. We should have a steady stream of projects that are ready to go. And if we're utilizing these other sources to have those projects potentially ready, if one falls because of whatever, we slip another one in there and we keep moving. That's just kind of the way I'm approaching this, so that it's not linear. It's got to be very much parallel in that. So I think we can come with something like that. That's my gut.
Yeah.
Let's go to the conversation. I think that's to some extent the elephant in the room a little bit, and let's talk through. We had 2 requests from the city of Tucson that were not addressed in this. One of them I had thought, I think Terry's got a question.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Perhaps before we move on to that, because I think that's going to be an important topic, I want to make sure, because a couple of times I've brought this up, and it's not reflected here, and I know why it's not reflected here is because absolute decisions and direction hasn't been given from the town of Marana on specific projects. But we have 3 projects in the town of Marana that are currently on the RTA. One of them is Cortero, one of them is Tangerine, and the other one is Ina. We've had a lot of discussions on our end about other needs and the desire to perhaps look at the projects that are currently there. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like. It may be a situation where there's more benefit to the region for an interchange at Moore Road than there is, for example, to spend 50 million, 55 million on Ina, and other ways to accomplish the widening of Ina and the addition of lanes without spending $55 million. So while staff is still looking at that and council hasn't given clear direction on that to me, I think it's important that we keep that in mind as we move forward. I think the other thing is Cortero and the amount of money that's necessary for that project. Do I think it's an important project? It is. do we have concerns about not only the money spent, but the impact to the town in terms of shutting down that interchange for 2 years? Yeah. So I think there's probably, I think that will be one that we will look to move later into the program, so that we can look at alternative options for that interchange. Can we accomplish improving that interchange and improving flow through that interchange without spending $350 million? So that's three pretty significant changes, and I understand that. But one of the main things that I mentioned it before, Tangerine is going to be an important one, and I think that's one that we're going to need to do. But we can't do Tangerine without a Moore Road interchange. We can't shut down Tangerine. It's like, it's the major interchange through which traffic flows in North Marana. So people coming from, Marana, the county, Oro Valley, coming off the freeway, not having a place to get on and off, if Tangerine is closed, is going to present a pretty significant problem up there. So I again, just want to throw that out there. I think each one of those things on themselves is very large, but I think it has the potential to save money in the RTA that could be utilized in other places.
Madam Chair, Terry, do you have, so for this discussion and purpose, there's two aspects to it. One is, we'll call it schedule and smoothing that we've been talking about. The second, though, is dollars and cash flow, right? I mean, what does that look like? Do you have a sense, you don't have to tell me now, but when will you have a sense of what impact that might have to the overall cost of this, so that we can at least factor that into some of these discussions? It might take some sting out of some of the other things that we're doing. That might help. So how soon do you think you'll know that?
I have some rough numbers. I'm just hesitant to share those rough numbers. So until those numbers get a little more solid, I would say probably another week or so.
Okay, that's okay, good.
Maybe by the meeting next Thursday.
Okay, or Wednesday.
Or Wednesday, I mean.
Okay.
We might have some better numbers there.
All right, that'd be helpful.
Bob, did you have your hand? No? Okay.
Tim does.
Tim, thank you.
Sorry.
I know. Tim.
Strength helps.
You don't have to fight. There's plenty of me to go around. I just wanted to voice some support for Terry and Marana doing that process. I think it is an example of looking at what could be potentially better outcomes for the region. I think we're finding ourselves in a space now where we're a little bit more licensed to think things through and actually be open and talking about potential things like that. So I credit Terry for bringing that forward, and I encourage us to continue down that path of looking for a better outcome.
Thanks, Tim. Tim, since you've got the microphone, I know that I mentioned earlier that we did not, I haven't addressed, by the way, the percentage, because what I said last time was we would go through this exercise and see where all the dust settled and then determine what that percentage was for the city. I have not done that, to be honest with you. You may have already done that, and we can talk through that. But I also specifically did not include the transit. Do you want to take a minute and maybe between you and Christina, kind of walk us through that, and let's talk through what your thoughts are and how we really address that in this plan.
I can start and Christina can follow. I would say to get to a better RTA next, those are things that would make it in the city's interest a better RTA next. Now, this is coming from staff and TMC representatives, not from the mayor or the council, as you know. Step one, with regard to transit, my feeling is that RTA Next underinvests in transit, period. there are opportunities to shift dollars into transit and not be in conflict with any previous level of effort or any of the things that swirl around transit. I think one piece of low-hanging fruit is RTA built the streetcar, and RTA included funding for the operations of the streetcar for the first several years, and then that money was programmed, spent, and no longer rolls into the operation of the streetcar. So I think it's a very legitimate ask to consider the operations of the streetcar be reinstated. I think there's asks well beyond that, but I think that's one that RTA built it, RTA funded it for a period. RTA resuming that funding in RTA Next is extremely reasonable. Having said that, I also know that as things get, and I'm going to use the word zhuzh, as things get zhuzhed around, and whether or not money comes out of contingency or money comes out of debt service, as money becomes available, I think it should shift to the city, because that percentage of 50% at pessimistic is not sufficient. So any dollars that free up that went to city priorities would increase that percentage without negatively affecting any other regional partner. Even though I know every other regional partner has some use for that money if it frees up, 50% is not where I say the city is getting its fair share of RTNX. So those are ways that even without blowing it up, which is not the intent, that a percentage movement can occur and a transmit movement can occur that I think are very supportable. Now, if we actually go with a longer time period to assess what RTA Next could be, because we get relief on the time frame, because I know right now we're chasing a deadline. If we don't have to chase that deadline, I think we could revisit a number of things that would make RTA Next better for the region. But those are two that I think if we're doing tweaks and whatnots, those are easy, relatively speaking. Christine, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Madam Chair, Tim, do you have a number? I think I know the number, but do you have a number for the streetcar operation?
Right now, it's about $7 million a year, but for context, I think the contribution was metered out at about $2 million a year under RTA current, but the current operating is 7 million.
But the contribution from RTA in operations was about 2 million, is that right?
That's my understanding.
Okay. Well, if we go back and look at potentially squeezing out another 2 million a year, so that's 40 million, right, total? And contingency and debt service, that's 25, and then another 60, that's about 85. So we're at about 85 million plus 40, right? So at about 125 million. My quick math. No, just I haven't gotten to the transit. I'm just saying what he just said, streetcar value and sweeping the contingency and the debt service. I just was figuring out what that looks like. That's okay. That's 125 million. Tim, is that track with your number?
It does. And to be perfectly honest, I haven't run a lot of numbers on this yet, other than what I've shared with you, but it sounds about right.
Now, with regard to the 85 million for in contingency and debt service, are you expecting or asking that go to transit, or are you asking that that go to the city? And my gut would be to arterial reconstruction.
I think, trust your gut. I think in a tweaking mode, again, with more time and consideration, we could come to different conclusions, but in the spirit of tweaking, I would say if the 2 million, was for the streetcar, and then any other dollars that freed up went to arterial reconstruction, that would be a good outcome. It would move the dial, and we have plenty of arterial reconstruction. And I think, quite honestly, Tucsonans would love more arterial reconstruction in this package, even more so than some of the name stuff, because I think that's what people want. And certainly the needs outstrip the dollars for sure.
Tim, to get you, sorry, I should go through you. Would it make sense for you to revisit some of your named projects and put more money in arterial reconstruction in the spirit of tweaks?
We've done that scrubbing, and the tweaks we proposed are where we're at with.
Okay. So you've already thought about that when you were going through your tweaks?
Yes, it does, never hurts to revisit, but that was.
I'm reacting to your thought that maybe there's more value in arterial reconstruction than in potentially a named project. And does it make sense to shift some of your money from a named project to arterial reconstruction? I'm just throwing that out there based on that comment you made.
Sure.
So, perspective means a lot, obviously, and Tim's perspective on this might be a little bit, it will be a little bit different than mine, but so and I'm not pushing back. I think just from a matter of providing perspective. So we say, or Tim just said, that RTA greatly underinvest in transit. And I'm looking at the number of $648 million that we're investing in transit. And it's hard for me to say that that's underinvesting in transit. And then if we're going to do another $2 million a year, $40 million over the project, now we're at 688 million, very quickly approaching $700 million. So I'm not saying that transit is not important. I just don't think it's a fair statement. And $40 million is still $40 million. And I just think it's a lot of money. If you take the number of people that are using the roadways versus that are using transit, and how much money we're investing per person that's riding transit versus that's driving a car on our roads, the investment in transit is significantly higher for those who are jumping on a bus. And I just think that that's important perspective for this discussion. Don't know that it changes anything, but I don't know that it's fair for us to say that we're under investing in transit.
Then you can simply attribute that straight to me. I'm saying it. I'm not saying we're saying it.
That's feedback. Okay, Michael.
Real, so we get paid to do. That's fine. So as I go through this sheet, we can go back and scrub it some more. We'll look at the projects. We'll put our thinking caps on again. Nothing sticks out at me. That's what I'm kind of looking at. Is there anything that sticks out that would make sense? So here's my gut on this. Let me work with the staff and I'll sit down with them this afternoon. And for Monday, let me come back with some suggestions or some recommendations that we might consider here. That's probably the best I can. I don't want to do it on the fly because I think that could be dangerous. I'd rather, let me take a little time and see what we can scrub and how we do this. I've got an idea, but I want to pass it by the wizards over here. My
Right.
financial wizards are the ones that help me do all this stuff.
And Tim, if you can help me, I'm just trying to understand some of the thinking and how we need to look at how we parse some of this out is what you're thinking about from where you came up with a percentage. Is it population? Is it sales tax? Is it assessed valuation? What is it that's getting you anywhere over 50%?
Population gets it there by itself.
52.
Taxing would be closer to 65%. So I'll take 65, but 52-ish, 52.5-ish,
Okay.
straight population math.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying clearly today is from a tweak perspective, I'm not drawing any lines. I'm saying
Appreciate that.
shift it to the city. That will move the percentage higher than 50, and that gives it a better chance of being supportable.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
Madam Chair, one of the things that was recommended by the general was going from rounding it up, basically. At that time, it was a 2.466 billion, and he recommended 2.5 billion. It's not a huge number, but it's an extra, 34 million. That could help. So, well, he just said we're going to refer to it as 2.5 billion, not 2.466 billion. And so he said, why don't we just call it 2.5? And I'm like, works for me.
Projection.
It's just the way to say
What
it.
do we call it?
Mike,
Well,
I'm having
so-
flashbacks to how you used to do
I
the
like
city
that
budget.
idea.
Mike was always like, we'll make it up in rounding.
We're gonna rack it up around it because it's not even round off here. So here's another piece. Here's another piece that's right around my head. When you look at the pessimistic numbers, and I've been supportive of that from the start, but when you look at those numbers, to some level, they assume almost no growth at all over the next 20 years. I think we got burned, right? I mean, that's why everybody's really gun shy, both on the cost side and on the expenditure side. And so I think that we've taken great care on the cost to include and make sure we get contingency and all that stuff in there. But then on the revenue projections, I think the U of A got burned. I mean, we all got burned, right? And I think there's concern about that to the level that we're understating those future revenues.
Can I just ask you a
Sure.
question? Because I think
Sure.
the RTA and others have asked about potential to scrub those numbers, to have either a second opinion or Eller look at it again. Is there anything going on in that world?
So Dr. Hammond, I understand is looking at that. I don't know that it'll be ready in time for the conversation. But my gut on this is that we're probably, I think we have a better than average chance of exceeding those projections. That's my gut. And so when we start looking at some of these, and if we're getting right down to the nitty gritty at the very end, maybe that's a conversation we have. And I didn't want to start there, but if that's what it's going to take to maybe get it across the finish line, maybe that's a discussion that we have. I'm not ready to give you that as a suggestion or recommendation, but I am telling you that's what I'm kind of thinking in my head, that maybe I'll look at it and I'll come back.
2.5 kind of does.
Well, sort of, yeah. 2.52 now. I don't know, but let me think on it a little bit and I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you on some thoughts.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Just a note, and I don't know how to solve this, but we're trying to make our best decision today in terms of forecasting revenue distribution. Doesn't matter what matrix we use, the HERF distribution formula or population or sales tax generation. It is what it is today, but I don't know what population distribution is going to look like 15 years from now or 20 years from now, and whether it's the city's going to maintain a, 52, 55% number or not. So it's just, we just got to figure out how to make that work. And it's hard to draw a firm line today, knowing that those numbers are going to change.
Madam Chair, and I appreciate that, Shane. I think what I heard from Tim is he's not drawing a line there. And I very much appreciate that, Tim. I think that's in the spirit of trying to figure this out. So let me work with the staff and come up with something. I don't know what exactly, but we'll figure it out and we'll bring that back to you. Madam Chair, if there's nothing else on that, what I'd like to do is talk some more about the I'll call it the harebrained idea I came up with last time, which is this interim step, this interim opportunity, because some of these they overlap. There's a lot of overlap there, but some of these conversations I think can be informed by how we approach that as well. Okay, and I think we might be able to do that. So, just to refresh your memory, what I threw out on the table, and by the way, it freaked out some people, and I didn't mean to freak anybody out, but everybody's kind of losing their minds about, but we were 20 years and that's what we want. And I understand, but I think realistically, when we study and analyze an opportunity to maybe move the needle and get to something quick, there is an opportunity to maybe look at we'll call it a hybrid or an interim solution. So just to refresh your memory, what we were talking about was going back to the voter in March. The ask would be something along the lines of completion of RTA 1, and I'm going to say modified of RTA 1, roadway element and categoricals. Okay. And I'm going to come back to the categoricals in a minute because I think that's important. So we go to the voter for that ask. We also go to the voter and so it's a rescoping and money associated with that to complete those projects because we need both. And an extension of transit beyond June 30 of 26. And I'll use the term arterial reconstruction and what that could look like. So Steph and I really looked at some scenarios and had conversation around that. And I think that the completion of RTA 1, modified RTA 1, the scoping of the roadway element and categoricals, I think we have a pretty good handle on that, in terms of what that's going to entail. Okay. Transit, I think we've got a pretty good handle on what that is. Basically continuing, it's about 32 million a year, et cetera. On the arterial reconstruction, we've actually run two different scenarios. One is distribution of money based on population or distribution of money based on HERF distribution. And that's another way to do it. I'm not married to it, but those are ways that we could, so it's formulaic. Now we're not sitting around, arguing about that. The other thing to think about, though, is, and I said it earlier just a few minutes ago, if we include the regional money into the conversation, we in essence could have a conversation with the voter, RTA 1, transit, and arterial reconstruction, and start using that regional money to accomplish and complete or start to implement RTA Next like projects. So if you think of it simplistically, we have all these projects, on this piece of paper, and we could start thinking about infusing cash from the regional allocation into accomplishing these projects. Okay. But for arterial reconstruction, transit, and the four projects that were included there, because the 4 projects are modified and put into the other, right? And the beauty of that is you're taking off hundreds of millions of dollars on RTA Next that we don't have to worry about because they're in that other ask of the voter. And so instead of looking at it on a 1-year or 2-year basis, we look at it on a 10-year basis, and we look at how these dollars can then be utilized for this effort. But we're not married to the RTA Next plan. That can be a regional conversation over time, whatever that looks like. And that is a conversation, you know, amongst the management committee as well as the regional council at the time. So what we did is James put together a spreadsheet that shows what that might look like. It's this one. It's the current RTA extended. And I'll turn it over to James as he looked at this, and we've been trying to scrub this and say, what does it look like and what does the investment look like? So, and again, keep in mind that I'm just suggesting that the RTA Next plan could be the starting point, but that we're not married to those projects. That would be up to the region and up to you all to make that recommendation, that decision. So, James, go ahead.
Well, thanks, Mike, Madam Chair. So before I get into the extended sheet, I just wanted to make a couple of clarifications on the RTA financial overview that was discussed. The overlay that shows the dollars and shows the expenditures in 2026 dollars. Just keep in mind that those expenditures are elements 1 through 4. It's not just the roadway expenditure. So if we, for instance, take a look at fiscal 2017, we show 114 million in expenditures. About 72 million of that was element 1 roadway. So if you look at the burn rate for
$5 right there. Thank you. You did know you were gonna do it. That's a donut. That's more than donuts. If everybody contributes, we can all fund something with that.
they kept getting me yesterday on that. So
Going to dinner tonight, Sullivan's.
so the expenditure rate
Thank you.
was actually about it's shown here about 6.6 million a month in 2017 for just element 1. So very rough math. If we show that in 2026 dollars, it would be about 12 or 13 million dollars a month. So if we just for this discussion use that as our maximum, is the region's best performance, then we go over to the current RTA sheet, the extended sheet, and the burn rates that have been listed.
Oh, go again.
Did it again. You're going to have to just accept it. I can't.
Just give us your credit card.
So the expenditure rates, the monthly expenditure rates required would be start off around 9 or 10 million a month, close to 11 first couple of years, 3 years, and then they would wind down. So the extended only includes the deferred projects and what's remaining in the current RTA. It does show that the TPT, we're taking the LR projection from 23 and we're inflating it to 2026 dollars. And we were rolling the fund balance out 8 years just for the sake of maintaining a reasonable expenditure rate through that period. The STBG we did not remove due to it's embedded into the 22nd Street overpass. So it would be difficult to find another home for those dollars, and it works well there. So I didn't pull that off, but we did return the HERF dollars. It would return the HERF dollars to the region in fiscal years 28 and 29, which would require some changes to the tip. So that was a positive. And then we also, this burn rate or the expenditure rate you're seeing is after we pay for transit. So that would be exclusive. It'd be available just for the roadway portion. And then there's also a line for discretionary allocations where potentially dollars could be provided to jurisdictional partners for various uses. And as this is laid out, that's currently in the $50 million range for the region annually. And then if you look down at the lower portion, it shows the expenditure potential if we were to only ask for 6 years, 8 years, or the entire 10 years to complete these projects. So clearly the expenditure rate is based on completing these RTA current and the deferreds in a decade. And I think these are favorable expenditure rates that the region, based on past activity, could support. So that sums it up. I'm happy to discuss or answer questions.
Madam Chair, one thing I wanted to, well, two things. One is, this is our, what I'll call our stab at trying to show a model that could work, given the conversations we've had. The other thing I wanted to point out, and I should have said this earlier, there was question about the delivery of the categorical elements, and we've been working hard to scrub that. Based on some very preliminary information, it looks like we're okay on all of them except for the bike lanes. The bike lanes, it looks like we're going to be short about 24 miles. And so that's the equivalent of about a $5 to $7 million cost. So what we'll do is we will include that in the RTA continuation conversation. So I think we're okay. I think there was maybe a concern that we had really shorted those. I think based on the delivery, lane miles and dollars, I think we're going to be okay, except for that. And we're gonna work on that in the RTA one extension. But I want to point that out. The other piece to this is when you really start to analyze this piece, and this does not include the efforts that we've been going through here. I mean, it dovetails in somewhat, but it's not exactly. It does give us an opportunity to go to the voter and have I used the overused word transparency that Shane was talking about, and have the open discussion with the voter about what this looks like. Now, I will preface or at least give you a little caveat to this, which is the attorneys are looking at how we do this, right? So is this, we talked, maybe there's a county ask there, maybe there's some other way that we can do this. So we're still scrubbing that, and we're not going to know for sure probably until Monday or Tuesday. This group will meet an executive session on Monday, and we'll get an update from the attorney, and we can have some of those, hopefully some of those, that guidance given us at that point. But I wanted to point that out because I think this is a potential solution, and I don't know that I'm ready to recommend it, but I'm wanting to throw these out so you know what we're trying to come up with to solve the bigger problem, right? The bigger issue. Now, my gut is that if this were to work the way that we outlined, and we go to the voter and the voter gives us the thumbs up on this, it doesn't mean that we're necessarily married to this for 10 years. My gut would be that we would proceed with the RTA next conversations and go back to the voter with an RTA next, potentially in 2 or 3 years, once we have a consensus plan that everybody can get around. And then that ask would basically eliminate this other ask that we're going through. So that they're not like this, that it's not one and the other. It's just, if we can, get together as a region and come up with an RTA next plan that everybody's feeling good about and can support, we go to the voter with that to replace this. And so whatever's left to be done would be included in that RTA next. And keep in mind, if it's 3 years from now, that expenditure rate, we will have already spent, in excess of 300 million at that point. So the need for dollars out of RTA next for RTA one are substantially reduced. And that's kind of the goal, is to try to figure out this stopgap measure. So it would not be my expectation that this would have to last 10 years. It could, and we've got a game plan for it. But if we can compress that into maybe a 2 or 3 year and then go to the voter again, all of a sudden we have an opportunity to do something that I think that'll work for the long term. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thoughts, comment? Okay. Well, and yeah, and I think a lot to absorb, and I think what everybody's just trying to figure out is how do we ensure that we have a transportation program that can be funded for the next 20 years? And there may be a few coming at the same time with the recognition that it's not acceptable to the region, to the people we serve, to not have this vehicle in some way going forward. So how the heck do we get there? And I again, to all the staff, and to Michael and everybody involved, to all of you who keep coming here. I know every single person in the room had something else that they were supposed to be doing this morning. Shane, probably.
I've given my life your form.
That's okay.
Good.
But I know how important this is to the region. We know that the board is seeing it as well. So thanks to everyone knowing, again, that, and we're not just going to go away and come back Monday. There's a lot of the work that everybody's doing during the period of time. But the feeling of the collaboration of the staffs is extraordinary and greatly appreciated. I know that our team and your team and everybody have been chatting, including I've seen communication between our communications teams of the various jurisdictions and the RTA, and that's the way we're going to be able to move this thing forward. So thank you. What else do you have for us today?
So that's pretty much it. So let's just go over homework, right? Yeah, we all got it. Yeah, it's like delete. So I think first and foremost, I'm gonna go back and try to address Tim and Christina's comments, try to figure out how we can address. I've got some ideas and we'll come up with something. So I think that's kind of priority one. Priority two, we're going to be meeting this afternoon, or at least I'm expecting to have more of a conversation with the attorney. Hopefully we'll have more guidance. As I mentioned, on Monday morning, there will be an exec session and then we'll get guidance there. And then the third thing, quite frankly, and I've got a bunch of notes on other little stuff, but the third thing is I really want us to have a more solidified option B, if you will, or plan 2 or option 2 with that shortened time, with that shortened scope, if you will, to give you a little bit more meat on the bone there so that you're able to react to that. If I can get that done today, I'll send that out to you all. You know, we'll send that out with the materials so that you're able to at least react, and hopefully you can react to that on Monday. Now for next Thursday, I'm hoping that by the time when we get with the board, we do have a recommended plan for RTA Next, along with potentially an option for them to consider, you know, the option 2. I'm not married to either one of them. I think we need to provide the board with some options as opposed to just, you know, here's RTA Next by itself. You know, I don't know that that's the only one that's out there that could work. And so that's my goal ultimately. The last thing I'll leave you with is, after all these gyrations, I still haven't figured out how we're going to fund transit should this not pass, or we don't go to the voter. I've not been able to figure that out. We're racking our brains, exploring all sorts of different options, and I just don't have any great ideas at this point. So I want you to know that that's the one thing that's really gnawing at me.
Yeah.
So that's all.
And one of our homework at Pima County is go back and look at Northern Corridor SR 210, and we'll provide some information. And I know staff's got a lot to do, but the whole concept of how we evaluate and identify the phases based on, is it start of construction, start of planning, sort of what does that snake look like along the way? I think will help everyone have a clearer picture of when we articulate what can happen. Shane?
Thank you. So are you hopeful, Mike, that on Monday, at the very latest Wednesday of next week, we'll have some guidance from legal on whether or not the RTA can ask for an extension of the current RTA with a plan that's something other than a 20-year plan?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm hoping by Monday.
Okay. I'll just put out on the table, I think the RTA Next plan, and you're tackling a monstrosity of a project, Mike and RTA staff. This is incredible. And I think, I look back and I wish that we would be having these kind of conversations. Jan made a comment like this earlier today, but if we had been having these kind of conversations even a year ago, we would be probably in a much better position, I think, with regard to making a recommendation on RTA Next plan to the board. There is still, in my humble opinion, a huge undertaking to get this region behind a recommended RTA Next plan. And I think of the policy development that needs to accompany the plan, RTA Next plan. I think if I heard Tim Tamir correctly in his comments, I believe the city even looks at, well, we really need to have some more time to develop a good RTA Next plan. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I certainly feel that way. I know that I'll have a hard time recommending to my mayor to support a RTA Next plan if we don't have those policies developed behind that. Lessons learned, how do we make sure? And I know that delivery is a big part of it. But there's just a lot of questions out there. So I hope that we can make a lot of progress on the alternative, because I honestly think that we need to create some space for us as a region to really put a good RTA Next plan together.
And I'm excited also about this conversation about what I keep thinking of as the SWAT team, or whatever is the group of the team out of RTA that can pivot out and assist with so many elements, be it, all the different elements. So I think that's another piece that we can begin to come back with the board as well. I'm sorry, Carmine.
Jan, thanks. And just want to go back to 210 for a moment. So I think input from the city and also from ADOT is important on that. So while the county's going back and taking a look at it, while there was a connection with Sonoran Corridor, I think that there are other reasons why that was viewed as being valuable to the region, right? There's a central industrial, right, hub within the core of our city that's served by those improvements. And I'm not suggesting that they need to remain at the level they are. And I think that connectivity with Sonoran Corridor, while it was part of the discussion, wasn't necessarily the primary. So also getting input from the city and ADOT as well as Pima County on that would be helpful.
Thank you for that clarification. Absolutely. Thank you. Terry.
Yeah, and I hope that me bringing this up doesn't indicate that I don't think it's important. I do think it's probably likely important. It wouldn't be on there if it wasn't. I'm just not sure it's $1 billion worth of important. That's where I'm at.
Again, we all were putting together some of these recommendations 3-5 years ago, and and I think having you taken those 3 projects off the table really helped a lot. So thank you all. Is that
real quick? Yeah, no doubt about it.
like we couldn't adjourn quickly.
Part of your city, I think, is in Pinal County too, right? So yeah, there's an opportunity there. So, real quick, we will not have policy. We will not have policy framework by next week, but there's just no way to do that. However, if we can get direction from the board on one of these paths, right, some path on the 31st, then the next opportunity is August 15th with the board. We could potentially have some draft framework for the 15th. Okay, so I'm just letting you know that. Last thing, I promise, we didn't go over this. We won't go over it, but this is our stab at potential distribution of the RTO reconstruction on that other plan. So just take a look at that and we can talk about that next time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Curtis.
Just a real quick, before we go, the CART committee apparently is meeting on August 5th. The TMC is an advisor to the CART committee. Is there anything that we should kind of be thinking about in reference to what the CART needs to be doing? Just a question. I think my answer is probably
Yes,
no.
that's right.
Bake sale.
Sell chocolate bars, yeah, cookies. I
We'll let you know.
I don't know. Thank you for that. We'll make sure we're understanding that intersection and not
Yeah,
that up.
Right, they have the CART committee has and continues to have a critical role in the completion of RTA one.
Thank you
Right,
very
yeah,
much.
uh-huh,
Yeah.
thanks.
Madam Chair, to address that, that was a hold the date, but we haven't heard back for a confirmation of quorum for everybody on that one. So we're still trying to navigate whether that date's going to actually hold.
We should be prepared for that conversation at the intersection. Regardless. Okay, see y'all Monday. Thank you. Have a great week. Okay. Do we need any clarification on what is executive session?
Yeah, we're gonna do that. We're gonna do
We
that.
can't, no, but okay.
Yeah, we're gonna do that because that, he just told me. but-
Yeah, haven't,
So-
but that's fine.
Send me a note that says